Hello, everyone, and welcome back. My name is Courtney. I am here, as always, with my spouse, Royce, and together we are the Ace couple. And I've made no secret of the fact that I am a woman of many maladies. The primary one being Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. Everything seems to come back to EDS. Once you've got a defect in your connective tissues, every new diagnosis, syndrome, symptom that you acquire and pick up and collect and add to your hoard along the way can always somehow be traced back to EDS. And we've talked about EDS before, and you can certainly listen to our previous episodes on the topic, but we were just having a fun, goofy little conversation, just the two of us the other day, and I thought this would be a fun idea for an episode. Because rightfully so, we have usually centered my experience, but we've been married 11 years now. Royce, you are a rather healthy person, quite able-bodied, certainly neurodivergent. But I think it would be fun to talk about your experience of living with someone who has EDS, among other things.
Well, I'm trying to figure out exactly how to go about this. I think it'll be an episode with a lot of tangents, but I think you sort of keyed into the first one we'll talk about just a moment ago. And if you are around or close to someone with EDS, or like you said, another type of rare-ish, often underdiagnosed or misunderstood condition, one thing that invariably is going to happen is you're going to get really good at Googling random symptoms and trying to figure out if they're connected. I know that doctors say don't do this. You just need to be careful. You need to be sensible about it.
I mean, that's such a good point, because this was a lesson I learned long before I met you, that a lot of my doctors are in no way prepared to handle my specific medical case. A lot of them do not have the skills and curiosity and empathy necessary to put in more research to learn about it.
That's when we're talking with general practitioners. Sometimes it's even hit or miss on the specialists.
Yes, that's very true. So I knew a long time ago that I had to sort of do my own research and be my own advocate. And I landed on Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome long before it was actually added to my charts, and I saw the right specialist who was able to look at me and say, yeah, all of this is textbook EDS, you're absolutely right. So I learned that through trial and error and bad experiences with doctors, but I guess I haven't even really asked you this, because you are someone who just naturally does research things. You're very curious, you like to understand things, and if there's a problem, you like to try to solve them, but your medical history is not complicated. You don't have to see doctors. So all of your Googling of symptoms, or most of them, pertain to me. And you've gotten pretty darn good at it over time. So what was that like?
I think, like in all things, I have gotten better at this. I think that for a variety of reasons, I am just pretty good at sorting through information online and figuring out what is misleading or not. Some of that I think comes from my career field. Some of it comes from practice. Some of it comes from just needing to get where I am in my own life with my own understanding of myself, given that I had to, at different points, realize that I was not the typical status quo person for sexual orientation, gender identity, or like brain wiring, whatever the word for neurotypical versus neurodivergence is.
Yeah, you've got that weird brain.
Yeah, so I'm used to having to have a thought about something and then step back and look at that thought and see if it's reasoned or justified. And that's what you have to do so that you don't go off the deep end when you're looking at medical symptoms, because oftentimes, given how different people's bodies are, when you look at the population as a whole, yes, a wide variety of people can have a wide variety of different symptoms or reactions to things, and many of them are not typical. So you have to, make sure you don't feel bad one day and go, oh no, I have cancer.
Right. Well, that's why I'm curious because I know that you do fall outside of a lot of social norms, so you've had to do a lot of self-reflection, and your general personality is normally, if the rules don't work for me, fuck them. But so it seems to me like probably your natural proclivity is to Google and research and try to figure something else out, but you just probably didn't have many reasons to do that before meeting me, so I'm not sure if you landed on that on your own or if hearing my medical history and what I had to do to get a diagnosis got you there.
I hadn't had to exercise those impulses to try to draw connections and make things make sense as frequently with myself. Before we met, there had been cases where, in terms of personal health or personal fitness, or if I did have something that wasn't a chronic condition or wasn't a injury, but I had a joint pain or some minor thing that went wrong. More recently, it's been how to, rehabilitate certain muscle groups or joints or something like that. Or these last few years, I've been reading a lot more about nutrition specifically and how vitamin deficiencies start or manifest, or what some of the symptoms can be if you're actually getting too much of certain vitamins and minerals. And it's the research process is the same. It's really hard to actually figure those things out and land on anything because it's hard to find reliable information, actually parse through it. But I do have a fairly regular habit of doing that. And I mean, you have talked both on microphone and just with me over the years about your process of self-diagnosing. I have a tendency to look things up when you do mention a new symptom. I called a new thing very recently, a few days before a doctor visit.
This was so good. And this is how we've been married as long as we have, and that you just really understand my medical history so much better than most of my doctors. It was so funny because I got some blood work. Some numbers were unusual. I had a primary care provider who was like, all right, we want to redo this blood work because we want to see if it's changed, if these numbers are still unusual. And I was asking, well, what could these numbers indicate? What does this mean? Is this a problem? Could this be dangerous? What does it mean? And the answer was just, well, it means we're going to redo your blood work. Okay, if you redo my blood work and the numbers are exactly the same, what does it mean? They're like, well, that means we do other tests. Other tests for what? This was the most frustrating conversation I've ever had because they just refused to tell me what this could possibly be or mean. And so I was actually in the process of trying to find a new primary care provider. So when they told me I had to redo my blood work anyway, I was like, maybe I'll do this with a new doctor. And when I told you, oh, this is the number that's weird, this is the test they want to redo, you just grabbed your phone and a few minutes later you're like, oh, I bet you have this syndrome. Because I found a forum of people with EDS talking about having this also.
Yeah, I mean, the process was, I looked at what the thing was, the thing that was measured in your body that was wrong, that was elevated. And I saw a list of common causes, and one, it said it was not an uncommon thing for people to have, and was also hereditary. And I know your family history better than most of your doctors, if
yes.
not all of them. I know your lifestyle and your diet, and so I was pretty easily able to not completely cross off, but reasonably reason out, if I were to assign percentages to all of the different causes or symptoms or manifestation and go, well, it's probably not a temporary cause based off of this, or that. It's probably a heritable thing that's been in your family for who knows how long. And then I just did the quick search that really works is to search the name of some new thing, EDS.
Yeah, the symptom, EDS.
Yeah.
And then look for forums, because even if there isn't a medical, sometimes you will actually find like health studies where someone is looking into something and finding a correlation between two things, but sometimes you can't find any like formally published documentation on this thing.
Sometimes you just have to crowdsource your correlations.
You go to like a Reddit forum, or previously I was in, EDS Facebook groups back in the day, and you'd find just like dozens of people saying like, yeah, my doctors don't know why, but this weird thing happens. And then all of them are like, OMG, me too. Oh, also me too. Also me. And it's like, okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Oftentimes these threads don't establish a clear through line. It's someone saying, I'm getting tested for this right now. Is this a common thing here? And then another person will say, well, I have EDS and my levels for this thing are always really high too. I've never been diagnosed with this other named syndrome, but I'm exhibiting the same qualities. Or you'll have two other people that are like, I have another interesting correlation here. Mm-hmm. And between people on that thread comparing EDS and POTS and mast cell activation syndrome and this fourth other thing, it was like, this is a pretty reasonable possibility.
Yeah, so that was really funny. So then the next day I went to brand new doctor and I was like, all right, here are all the things that I don't feel like were properly addressed with previous PCP. And also, hey, this blood work came back weird. What do you make of that? And new doctor was like, yeah, let's redo your blood work. Let's actually redo it sooner than your other person was recommending. And so they just took my blood again that day, a couple days later. And the very next day they come back and they're like, yeah, you probably have this syndrome. I'm like, great. My spouse told me that like 3 days ago. Thank you for confirming.
Well, yeah, at least they ran the proper test to tell the difference.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a good point of, I guess, going into visits with, you don't want to go in with confirmation bias. You don't want to overly convince yourself that it has to be this one thing, but going in with some additional knowledge, because not too long ago during all of this, you had to get blood drawn more than once. And usually if you know this ahead of time, I have to go with you because you might not be able to drive yourself home because of problems. And it has been such an issue getting phlebotomists to take it seriously.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And normally I don't speak up, but during this one you had to leave the room for a moment. And I turned to the phlebotomist who was still setting things up, and I was like, okay, so I know you've been warned, but here's the thing. This isn't like squeamishness. It isn't a problem with needles. It's not anxiety. This is a connective tissue disorder and POTS. Rapid drop in blood pressure once the blood draw actually starts, which I'm not even sure is 100% true. That's just like our best theory right now for why you lose consciousness during a blood draw.
Yeah, it's wild because the first time that happened, I was maybe a preteen, and I'd always been super fine with any and all needles going up. I'd had a hospitalization where they put in lots of IVs. Like, that had never been a problem. But then I randomly fainted, had a convulsing pseudo seizure, scared the hell out of my mom because the phlebotomist started screaming 911. And everyone was like panicking, and it's like, come on now, we are in a doctor's office. Someone should be able to handle this. And I come out of it just fine. I mean, tired and dizzy, but there aren't lingering problems. But it just sometimes happens when I have blood drawn, and has ever since then. And so, yeah, I can't drive myself. I have Royce come along. And when I try to tell people, because I'm also a very hard stick, my veins are difficult for a lot of reasons. I'm like, I have little tiny baby veins. You need to use the baby needle on me. I've been told I'm valvy. I've been told my veins roll. If you can even find them, you won't be able to get the needle in it. I've been told all of these things. I'm a very difficult stick, but if you still manage to stick me and you draw my blood, I might faint, and if I faint, I might convulse violently. And I always, when they're scheduling me for blood draws, I always try to impress this upon the person scheduling me, because I'm like, I cannot stress this enough. you have to give me the best phlebotomist you've got. Like, who is the best one that works in your office and what day are they working? And sometimes they'll try to shrug it off me like, oh, all of our people are great. No, they are not. I've met all of your people and they are not great. I need the best one you've got. And you need to warn them that I'm difficult because they need to bring all their tricks. They need to bring something hot to warm my veins up. They might need 2 tourniquets. They need a cold pack for my head.
That was a new one we learned, the double tourniquet. We're just collecting those to pass on to other phlebotomists.
Yeah, and I'm like, tell them to bring all their tricks, and also, I need to be laying down, like, this can't be in one of the upright chairs. If I'm laying down, I have a shot at not fainting, so lay me down on a bed. And sometimes when I go through all these things, like, no, seriously, we're going to waste everyone's time if you don't take these seriously. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, well, we can prescribe you a Xanax before your appointment if you're afraid of needles. Are you kidding me? I am not. You did not listen to anything I just said.
So yeah, with this one phlebotomist, I was like, okay, connective tissue disorder, veins are tiny, and they're going to move in ways that most people's veins don't move. That's why it's not just a hard stick, it's a thing. Also, the loss of consciousness and possible pseudoseizure, that is connected to POTS. I don't know specifically if either of those things are 100% true. A specialized enough doctor might be able to say otherwise, but it didn't matter because by saying something very deliberate, it got the phlebotomist to pay attention.
Yeah, finally. Well, because this was also after a failed attempt, because you drove with me to an appointment, and for some reason we can always tell, both of us, independently of one another, we can always tell when the phlebotomist is not going to be able to do the job. I can't really explain everything about this phenomenon.
I mean, the last one is because they were overly dismissive.
Well, she comes into the room and starts talking to me as if I'm a child, first of all. She's like, hi, I hear we're getting blood drawn today. And I was like, yes, did they warn you about me? Yeah, they told me it might be a little tricky, but don't worry. It's nothing I haven't seen before. I've seen all of it. And then I just like look over into the corner of the room and Royce, I just see you. You're like on your phone and I just see you start shaking your head because you're behind her. She cannot see you. And I'm like, okay, so Royce also sees it. This person is not going to be able. And she didn't. She stuck me several times in several places and then was literally trying to draw blood from my foot when she got desperate.
Suggested, did not attempt.
Yeah, she was fully like, I just have to ask the doctor's permission and then I can find a vein on your foot. And I was like, please don't bother. I will come back. And so we had to schedule another one. And that's when you stepped in and you're like, no, please listen. It's a thing. And she actually got the job done. But yeah, that was funny when you're like, no, it's a connective tissue disorder. Then she was like, oh.
Moving on a little bit, I guess in the same vein as that, one thing you have to just sort of get used to doing is, we've just gone over medical professionals, but explaining to other people, just ordinary people that you're around in group settings, that they need to chill out and stop asking so many questions. If, you start having a dizzy spell or need to sit down and pause for a moment or something like that.
Well, it's really helpful to have you around in those situations because any new person who's going to be around me long enough is going to start seeing things like that. And it's jarring to a lot of people sometimes, the extent of it. And honestly, medical professionals too, for that matter, because not only for driving me, but for blood draws and things. I know there was one time that I had passed out. I must have been shaking or something, because as I'm starting to come to, I just very faintly heard the phlebotomist say, is that normal? And you were like, yeah. Like the medical professionals were asking you if whatever was happening with me was normal, and your confirmation that, yes, this is fine, she'll be okay in a minute, gave them comfort. But that does happen just with friends and acquaintances. A lot. And I guess, like, yeah, you're around me more than anyone else and have been for over a decade now. So you are very used to the things that might happen and the extent to which they might happen. And, you know, it's normal and what might not be. But, like, how much of this was just really jarring for you the first few times you encountered them? Because I don't remember you, like, outwardly panicking in the way that, like, some of our new friends have.
I don't remember ever being particularly panicked. I think the first time, I don't know if you told me, like warned me ahead of time, or if the first time you needed to be closer to the floor and may or may not have like lost consciousness, if you were able to get a sentence or two out before you did so.
I fully remember warning you before we ever came face to face.
That's what I was thinking.
Like the first time we're meeting in person, I was like, it might not even happen because every day is different. Some days are better than others, but just in case. So you know this is a real possibility, and please don't call an ambulance because this is America and we don't pay for those if we can avoid it.
Yeah, so expectations were set, and the whole thing doesn't take that much time. So it was basically just like, okay, I was told this might happen. I'm gonna wait a little bit. So no, wasn't that big of a deal.
Which is great. I love that about you.
I guess moving on from there, some things that might feel familiar to anyone out there if they live with someone with EDS is having an understanding of the organization of the brace drawer or the or the cane closet.
We do have both of those things. Although I can't say you've mastered an understanding of the brace drawer because I have fully been like, hey, Royce, go to the brace drawer and get this particular brace for me. And you'll just open it and be like, which one is that?
Yeah, sometimes I can pick them out. Sometimes it's not obvious. Sometimes I've just grabbed the drawer and been like, here, you pick the brace.
You have fully done that. You have taken the drawer out of the dresser and just carried the entire drawer to me.
It's a fairly small drawer, so that's easy enough to do.
And then, bonus points, you get to use my braces and canes if ever you need them, which normally you don't take me up on braces. Every now and then you might be like, oh, my elbow's acting up from that old dodgeball injury, and I'll be like, I have elbow braces, and you're like, nah, I don't need it. But then you start Googling your symptoms and realize you probably have some kind of elbow strain injury, and you get a list of exercises to do with them that requires like a long stick, and you're like, aha, we have many of those. Let me use one of your canes to exercise my old dodgeball injury.
We learned recently that the kind of brace I would use for that isn't the same kind of brace that you use for your joints.
Well, we know that now.
Yeah.
We didn't know that then. Mine are far more heavy duty than you need, turns out. Shocker.
And your braces are usually more for protecting the joints than dealing with muscle problems.
Do listeners know that you used to be an excellent dodgeballer?
I don't know, you bring it up every now and then. I used to work at a company that had a dodgeball court in their basement. There was a citywide like corporate challenge thing that would happen every year, and this company would always host the dodgeball tournament for that.
And I loved that you still worked at this company for a period of time after we first got married, because I would get to witness these like dodgeball tournaments, and the level of grace and majesty you brought to the dodgeball court cannot be overstated. Long flowing hair as you move just so quickly, sharp and quick, but somehow exceedingly gracefully. It was a shock and a delight to all. Too bad about that elbow injury that is now giving you problems.
Yeah, it's technically the elbow in the shoulder, but the elbow's worse.
Which kind of elbow did we decide it is?
The closest thing is probably pitcher's elbow. Which is close to tennis elbow.
Because there's tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, and pitcher's elbow, and you probably have at least one of those elbows.
Yeah, the exercises I have been going through are actually for baseball pitchers trying to rehabilitate strains on their elbows.
Who normally do these exercises with a baseball bat, but Royce is just using my walking canes.
A baseball bat would actually be more comfortable because since it has a slow curve, you can put your hand at the part that's comfortable. The canes that I've tried it with are smaller than I actually need, so my fingers don't line up quite right. But we're figuring that out. As I mentioned earlier, a part of my own research recently has been trying to figure out if I have some oddity going on, whether it's like some joint pain or a muscle problem or something like that, or something dietary. Doing some quick research and then experimenting and seeing if it helps, and just repeating that process. But let's see, going back to the main topic at hand, another common experience people who live with people with EDS might have is usually knowing what you make for breakfast, even if I'm not in the room.
Royce, how dare you?
Particularly if it's like cereal. Because
not the cereal.
There'll just be a trail of like Cheerios.
Okay, a trail is a little much.
There'll be some directly around where you were pouring, but then there's also some that have rolled away in the vicinity.
Wow, I didn't know you were just gonna read me like this. I really can't explain it.
Going on to, again, threads of people discussing it, some different people have different theories on what I heard a couple people call the dropsies.
The dropsies!
But one common thing people talk about is poor proprioception. And then there's also just joints going out all the time.
Yeah.
Or weakness in grip strength, which might also be due to joints just going out all the time because you have a lot of joints in your hand.
Yeah, and they don't work very well most of the time.
No.
Well, because that's the thing. Like, sometimes I will drop things fully because of an injury. Something gets dislocated. Even if it's not a full dislocation, something might roll. But, like, those are times when I'm fully aware that I dropped something. And you're normally also fully aware that I dropped something, because if you aren't in the room at that point, that's normally a loud enough one that you're aware something happened. But, like, there are times when you started, the first, like, couple years we were married, when you'd just be, like, finding pieces of cereal in places, I was so baffled because I could be so certain that I did not spill anything. I did not hear anything. I did not see anything. I searched the area after pouring a bowl of cereal and I'm like, nope, don't see anything on the floor, the counter. And you'd somehow still manage to find like a miscellaneous Cheerio somewhere. And I'd be like, how? I truly don't understand.
I don't know, but it's consistent. Speaking of dropping things, yeah, sometimes I do hear it, or I am around when it happens. There's also the times when it's quick, there's a spill, and I need help cleaning it up real fast.
Oh, yeah. That happened in a real big way recently, and I'm still very sad about it because I poured, on accident, an entire bottle of ink on the floor in a carpeted room.
Yeah, we're still working on that one.
Oh.
I don't know. It's
never coming out.
It's at least lighter now, but we need to keep trying to go over it.
That's what I get for writing with a quill and ink in a carpeted room. I should have known better. I do it all the time, and I have never actually dropped ink yet, but yeah, I guess it was bound to happen someday.
I learned that if you're going to be using a lot of hydrogen peroxide to clean something, that you should wear gloves. Even if it's the normal store-bought 3% stuff.
Oh yeah, you fully chemically burned yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Why did you do that?
It was a very light chemical burn because I noticed it starting to sting and discolor my fingers early enough.
Don't do that.
I didn't think it was going to be a big deal, but this ink was really stubborn.
PSA, next time you're cleaning ink that you spilled on the carpet.
Yeah, if you notice your fingers starting to go white, stop. And go wash them off with soap and water.
So there's there's the two kinds of dropping. There's like the obvious injury drop. There's like the stealth drop where little pieces of something will just get somewhere and nobody has any idea how that happened. But the other thing that no one has any idea how it happened are like the weird ones where you just fully like throw something unintentionally.
Yeah, it's like, well, you tell me, is this a situation where you're actively moving and then a joint goes out, so, like, the thing carries your momentum?
Sometimes, but sometimes the joint doesn't even go out. Sometimes it's just like a muscle spasm or a twitch or something. So I'll just be like, oops! Oops, I threw it across the room. Don't know how. Wish I didn't.
But yeah, I guess that's a good segue into a division of, like, household labor that is atypical or different than what you tend to see in most relationships, where because your joints don't always cooperate in a variety of ways, because of the chronic pain, because of some other things like that, the way that we section up and divide out all of the various things that we have to do in life is a bit different than what most people in relationships do. And that is something that we've had to be, like, aware of and intentional about.
Yeah, because the way you kind of see it, like, when it comes to just organizing and running our life, you kind of conceptualize our hours and energy and ability as, like, one unit. And you tend to think, like, well, if this is a thing I can do faster and easier than I can, then normally it's not, oh, well, that's not fair because I just did X, Y, and Z already. Normally you're like, this is the most logical division of...
It makes more sense to do it that way, particularly because, like, overexerting yourself has consequences.
Yeah.
For anyone, whether you are burning out or exhausting yourself either mentally or physically or dealing with the buildup of chronic pain. And if we weren't so deliberate about how we divided things up and how we chose to do certain things, all that would happen at the end of the day is that we would be able to do less because that would cascade. Mm-hmm. Like, if you spent your time and energy doing things that you were either very inefficient at doing or that cause a lot of additional pain, all that would mean is you could do fewer things later. Or it could be to a point where you're injured or are unable to do things for a while, which just means I would have to do more then. So it makes sense for me to just do the things that I can do more easily up front.
Plus, yeah, just having more time to, like, do things together, I think, is a big part of that logic also. Because, like, if I spend a full day doing chores, I will be wiped and not be able to have, like, quality time in the evening. But you can spend half as much time doing the same chores, and then we can have plenty of time together at the end of the day. And I just really appreciate that that is a value that you have. And the way you see our combined energy as sort of our same household unit and are willing to find the most logical ways. Because, I mean, we've talked about this in, like, a division of labor episode before, too, where, like, my skills are far more suited to making phone calls. So things like making appointments, scheduling things.
And those are things that, if you do them, they won't stress me out and I won't put them off for too long if I just don't want to do them.
Exactly. Has there been anything over the years that has been, like, a big surprise or change to you? Because you tend to, at least on the outside, just accept things pretty quickly and naturally. But, like, I had never walked with a cane until a couple years into our marriage. So, like, things have changed and my symptoms have fluctuated.
I don't think it's really caused that much of a difference. I think it is a good lead into something else that I jotted down to talk about, though, was needing to adapt our lifestyle to sudden flare-ups of allergies or other intolerances.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's more MCAS than EDS, but we think. But yeah, we don't have a standard coffee pot anymore. We moved into a house with a gas stove that we try to minimize the usage of. There are just some things like that. Are you still allergic to hand soap? Did that go away? Have you tried?
That, I think, is gone. I've been testing the waters lately. So, yes, for those keeping track at home, I have not actually been diagnosed with MCAS. Right before the pandemic hit, like the month or two before, I was seeing a specialist who was going to test me for it. But then that pandemic happened, and so I stopped going into doctor's offices for a very long time. And now I don't think that doctor even works at that place anymore, or they're not in network anymore, or it's all a pain. So the allergies I do have or have developed, one was dust. I think that was the biggest one. The dust and gas kind of coincided with each other because my breathing issues like really, really flared up for a time. So we had to make some accommodations to that. I do have a dust allergy, general just air quality things we were looking at. I randomly broke out in hives one day the minute I walked outside when it was very hot. And the doctor was pretty sure that that was in fact caused by the heat. So sure, allergic to the heat. Sounds about right. That was one of my migraine flares when I was a kid, was extreme heat. Developed a rather severe allergic reaction to over-the-counter melatonin, and then liquid hand soap was a very, very weird one, unexplainable, except maybe for mast cell activation syndrome. Maybe that's the explanation. And just a couple months before the pandemic hit also, where I would wash my hands with liquid hand soap and it would just be burning, searing pain. And I still have these wild pictures from it of what my hands looked like bright, angry pink, which is not a color I think my skin has ever been. And I couldn't wash my hands even at like public bathrooms. Like, this was when I was performing at Hamburger Mary's. I would fully have to just bring hand sanitizer with me because I couldn't use the soaps in any of these places without my hands acting up. And for our house, I tried just some bar soap where it did not act up. So we were using bar soap for a while, but now that we're starting to occasionally leave the house very carefully, I have a couple times tested the waters and tried some liquid hand soaps, and I have not had any reaction to anything yet. So hooray, that one's gone. That was an inconvenient one.
Yeah, liquid soaps are technically detergents, so they have a different composition than hand soaps, and because of that are harsher or more likely to cause irritation in people. So it makes sense that you were able to fall back on hand soaps or bar soaps.
Yeah, well, you mentioned coffee too.
Which I have no idea if that's related. That wasn't as jarring of a reaction, I don't think. That seemed like a more gradual thing.
Well, it took a long time for me to realize what the issue was, because I never had that to coffee outside of the house. And there was like a business breakfast meeting I would go to a couple times a month. And I would always feel just incredibly nauseous after that meeting, to the point where I stopped ordering breakfast when I went there, and I would just drink coffee and I would still feel incredibly nauseous. So I was just thinking, I'm not a morning person. I shouldn't be waking up this early and leaving the house and driving this far and doing all this, because clearly I didn't get enough sleep last night. And I just thought it was sleep related. But this was happening regularly, twice monthly for a couple of years, until I went to Sweden and got like a coffee on a train car and felt exactly that same type of nausea at a very different time of day. And then I went, oh, I think it's the coffee. But why is it the coffee? Because I drink coffee at home every single day.
And the difference there was the coffee we were drinking at home was dark roast, and the coffee you were drinking in other places was either light or medium. The lighter the roast was, the more of an issue you seemed to be having. We have some speculation as to why, but that's another unconfirmed one at this point. It's just mostly you can't drink that stuff, so you don't.
Yeah. Simple as that. Like, since I've been avoiding it, I haven't had that issue again.
There are a few things about lighter roast coffee that can cause some kind of gastrointestinal problems for some people, but there's more than one thing. There's more than one difference between light roast and dark roast that could be responsible for it.
Yeah, which was wild. And yeah, we don't even drink coffee at home anymore because now we make espresso like snobs.
Yeah, that took us a little bit to go all in on. I think it was worth it. It's nice that, the recurring cost of coffee is purchasing the beans, particularly if you're trying to get good beans from, a local shop around you. They can be a bit pricey, and because espresso is pressurized, they last longer. You get more caffeine per bean.
Morphine per bean.
And the manual, like, lever action press that I did some research on and picked up wasn't all that bad, particularly considering, you know, it has no electronic parts. It's a pretty simple mechanical thing that, one, I'm glad I got because you can't clean the internals of coffee pots very well. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to have something that you can actually take apart. You can take apart the parts, the small canister that the beans sit in that the coffee actually goes through very easily. And that's nice, just knowing a lot more about how many things build up in machines that have tap water go through them.
See, my strange allergies and sensitivities led us on a path to a higher quality of coffee.
Yeah, I will say to anyone else who has been curious about getting more into it, the one big point of hesitation I had was actually spending the money to get a quality coffee grinder. And I have to say, if you're really getting into it, like, just do it. It's both necessary and useful. Because we messed around with a cheap little grinder from somewhere, and it wasn't consistent enough, and it took so much longer. It was so much more effort.
You suffered through that for a long time. Our good grinder's relatively recent, actually.
It is.
And you were so excited when that was coming in. You were like, oh, my grinder's coming.
Yeah, and part of that was I had done so much research on this. But yes, it is worth it. Just go all in. Go for it.
But yeah, and that's something that isn't necessary. That's something that we decided to do based on having limited options. But primarily you made a lot of changes with the allergist recommendation with my dust allergy and how bad my lungs were getting there. Because we had to make a lot of changes in the house to accommodate that, and you did pretty much all of them because I was very allergic and not breathing very well.
Yeah, there are a few of them. One was just, making sure we get the hard-to-reach dust areas more frequently, which is more of just it's a good habit to get in anyway, even if you aren't having asthma issues. But we did have to do some research and get some specialized bedding to, keep from dust in the mattresses or pillows from coming out. I keep a little, handheld squeegee in our shower because I found that when I'm done showering, if I just really quickly run all of the, beading water down into the drain, the bathroom dries up so much faster and you have a much lower chance of mold, which mold was also a trigger for you.
Mm-hmm. Is that why you've been doing that?
Yeah, it's to prevent mold in the bathroom.
Oh, that's so sweet.
You didn't know that?
I've been seeing you do that recently. You have never once said aloud that is what you were doing or why.
I'm pretty sure I have.
I don't think so. I don't think that happened.
It is amazing how big of a difference that makes, too. Because when you just let the room dry off on its own, it's humid for a long time. But just taking the standing water and getting rid of it lowers the humidity so much faster.
Fascinating.
Being better about gas was also not too big of a deal. It's an expensive change to actually do right. We haven't fully done that yet. But the little induction cooktops that you can just get wherever that are, maybe $100, they work great. I'm really happy with them.
You love that thing.
But yeah, I'm after having one for a while, even, again, not a very sophisticated one, I am firmly in the belief that everyone should switch to induction as soon as they are financially able to. The industry should switch. If you are stuck on gas for the time being, make sure it's ventilated. Use the whatever hood is built into the microwave above your stove or whatever. But more and more studies are coming out about how bad having really any kind of gas anything in your home is, but it's still going to be a while until things fully transition over.
That is something that I hadn't considered until you talked about these two things close together, but you've gotten really excited about things that were essentially changed or added to our life to accommodate me. And you've, made a hobby of it. I don't think you would have started making espresso on your own if my coffee options weren't already severely limited and we were having that conversation. And I do think you probably would have landed on induction tops on your own just for the sake of efficiency and because the research you've done. But because of my lung concerns and air quality in the house, that became like an emergency that you expedited and really wanted to make changes as soon as possible. And now you love that thing.
Yeah, there's definitely an impetus there. I might have gotten there to some degree. I mean, you had been saying that you would like to have espresso at home one day. And that's just a big thing to research because most serious, like full espresso machines are really expensive. Like I said, I found a manual lever action one and then read enough to realize, okay, this isn't going to be so strenuous or so time consuming that I'm going to hate it. It's actually pretty easy to do, and tried it and was right that it's really not that big of a deal. It's not that much more work than making coffee or, grinding your own beans or doing whatever. It's just a few minutes of a morning ritual. So it was pretty easy to switch over. I have occasionally gotten into air quality research discussions or threads, things of that nature, because it's something that has been and is going to continue getting worse and worse, partially just because of pollution in general, partially because household efficiency requires you to have a house that reduces air leakage. Because you need better insulation, you need to keep the right temperature of air in your house and the wrong temperature of air outside of your house. That also means that you're going to be recycling more air. That means that if you have any pollutants, they're going to build up more. So newer houses that are insulated better are going to have more air quality issues. And this gets, worse if you're working from home all the time, if you're at home all the time. So doing things like, again, burning gas in your house can turn into big, long-term, sometimes subtle health complications. And it is exacerbated by the times that we live in. And I have looked into some of the subtle symptoms of, poor air quality. And sometimes they do just manifest as difficulty focusing, difficulty sleeping, brain fog, inability to concentrate, things. There are some mental issues like just chronic fatigue, things of that nature that happen from just breathing in pollutants and things like that.
Yeah, those hard to pin down things that could be caused by anything or nothing.
and there have been times when I've been feeling off and I couldn't quite tell, is it just anxiety? Is it stress? Am I feeling burnout? Or is it some kind of health thing that is going on, whether it's, dietary or again, air quality? I've gotten into those air quality discussions as a part of something that I was feeling was wrong at the time. And I think that me looking into those, either for my own interest or to try to figure out something that was off with me, and then you having issues, coincided, and it was enough of a push to actually start doing something.
I mean, honestly, pro tip for life, if you are someone who wants to have long-term cohabitating partnership, make it interabled. I am not at all joking, because so many of the changes we've made have been very quick because I needed it for my health. It needed to be a very quick, sharp change. So then you aren't dragging your feet doing it, because now it's very much an accommodation necessity. But then we have Royce here, who is much healthier. So if anything is possibly going wrong, just even if it's just a little deficient on this vitamin, you notice those changes, but you also, if you try to make a change, to add or remove something to try to fix the issue resolves itself very quickly. So you have a very quick turnaround of oh yeah, I made this change and it got better. So that was the problem. Because things aren't quite as clear with me when there's an issue, because a lot of things are just internal because my connective tissues don't work. So not everything is an external issue. It's just external issues exacerbating it. So we've got the big major lifestyle changes that need to happen because of me, but all the little subtler things, you are just such a good guinea pig for, because you get such quick feedback. And it's not complicated by other things. So that's really the way to do life, I think. Because a lot of people are very put off by or confused by interabled relationships. And, like, I can't tell you how many people, like, absolutely believe that you are a saint just because you live with me and do extra chores and, like, do these things to, like, help accommodate my health. I know in a previous episode I just talked about the fact that you, like, walk at my pace and don't walk ahead of me. And I know there were other listeners of ours who are also slow walkers like me for their own unique medical concerns who are like, yeah, I've never had anyone who will walk at my pace. Everyone just leaves me behind and walks faster because they think it's annoying to walk slower. So little accommodations like that, I don't know. I guess, where do you think that comes from? Because it doesn't feel like it's ever been a strain or a stress or a problem for you to welcome me into your life or to build a life with me. Whereas other people are like, well, I could never do that, or you're such a saint for doing that.
Well, on things like walking at group pace, I don't know why people can't do that. I don't know why people get so weird about walking speed. I also wonder sometimes if people underestimate their capacity for change when they don't actually have to. Like if that person that could never live with someone who had a disability had a child that was disabled, would they change pretty quickly?
Oof.
I know that's not universally true. Some parents suck, but...
I mean... But yeah, an excellent point. This might be an odd or fun thought experiment because everyone gets used to their own normal. But we touched on a little bit earlier where, like, other people around me, newer people who haven't seen me with a dizzy spell or haven't seen me when I, like, convulse a tiny little bit, get really, really shocked and really concerned. And that is just, like, so normal to you. So what, in, like, an average day from waking up to going to bed, can you explain or try to the listeners what you might see or what might happen that is just not normal for most people's every day?
Well, I'm trying to think about what my day-to-day is as it correlates, because oftentimes I try to frame what I intend to do for the day in a loose list that is somewhat scheduled. What I try to do for a day is figure out what has a hard time. Like if I have a work meeting or something going on, what is something that needs to be done at a particular point in time? What are the things that I need to do? And then how do you fit into those things? And some of that is like mealtime, meal prep. Some of it's you have something that you need to get done, but it would be useful if I was around at the time that you were starting to do that so I could help you get set up. If it's, involves getting ready for something, or if something needs to be moved. There are a variety of situations where if you're about to go do something, it's useful if I'm around. So I try to sort of get my idea of a day scheduled and then frame the pieces into it and keep things loose for the miscellaneous stuff that I need to do around the house here and there.
Moving things an excellent point, because some things are very hard for me to move around.
That's the thing where you can have joints that just go out. And the stuff needs to get done. So that needs to be accommodated for. But, I mean, you get dizzy basically every time you stand up.
Yes.
You don't really faint anymore. You haven't done that in a long time.
Yeah, I rarely fully lose consciousness. There will still be bad ones where it's like, I need to get to the floor immediately or else I will lose consciousness. And that's a quick drop, but it's at least somewhat controlled.
I barely even notice the joint pops or subluxes anymore. I mean, those happen all the time. Other people call them out more frequently.
Yeah, it's just background noise to you now. Well, sometimes you have to pop me.
Well, that's true. I pop your back fairly often.
Hey, Royce, pop my back. Sometimes if my big toe is bad, sometimes you'll just grab it and swing it around.
There was a time period many years ago where you were asking me to do that more frequently, and I think it was because one or both of your big toes got subluxed for a long period of time. Like you couldn't get it perfectly back in place.
Yeah, that did happen.
And so we were fiddling with it.
Back when I was still teaching dance lessons.
Yeah, that would have been it.
But that was so goofy, too, because it wasn't out so bad that I couldn't keep living my day-to-day.
It was just out a little bit.
It was painful and annoying. And so that was a goofy period of time, because you would just grab my toe when we were just, like, watching TV or something, and you'd just, like, fuck around with it, just, like, whipping it around, moving it in circles, just hoping something would slide back.
There was a pattern that we had kind of worked out, like a certain type of movement that would pop a few times and would seemingly help it a little bit, but it wasn't going fully back into place.
I forgot about that.
Oh, sometimes I forget how some people get kind of grossed out about hypermobility.
Oh yeah, very squeamish.
Yeah, because that's something that's never bothered me. Like, some people get a very visceral negative feeling by looking at a contortionist, for example. Mm-hmm. And I do have some hypermobility. It's just very isolated. So I don't know if it's because I've always been able to, like, bend my fingers or wrists in ways that most people can't, that never bothered me, but I've never had that reaction.
Yeah, it's really only your small joints that are hypermobile. Like, you don't get the big ones.
Yeah.
Like elbows, knees, hips, back. But your fingers, silly fingers.
I mean, those are the big day-to-day ones. It's a lot of joint pops and things coming out of place, and the dizzy spells.
Yeah.
Which I guess those are kind of funny, too, around other people, because you'll stand up and have a noticeable dizzy reaction, and someone will say, "Did you stand up too fast?" or something like that, and it's, like, literally always.
No, I can stand up so slowly. I could spend 20 minutes standing up, and it would still happen.
Sometimes you get dizzy when you, like, sit up in bed or something.
Yeah.
Like, you're not even standing.
It's unfortunate. But yeah, there's different levels of those dizzy spells too. Like, sometimes it is just very much like as if the average person did just stand up too fast, like a little head rush, like, oh, and then we're back to normal. But sometimes it's a really big deal, and sometimes I'm a little bit shaky. And if I happen to be, like, holding something, like if I'm holding a glass, like a drink or liquid or something, and that happens to me and you're anywhere in the vicinity, I'll just be like, oh, take this.
That is one thing. When you're walking out of a room, I do have to look back over to see if you were carrying a bunch of things while you got dizzy. Generally, you don't, but usually I glance over and I'm like, okay, you have one thing in your hand and it's small. It's probably fine.
You are very swift about moving and grabbing something from me when I am dizzy and possibly about to drop it, if it's breakable or heavy or spillable.
That's funny when occasionally when we're around some of our closer friends who are just around the house, if that happens, because I just walk over, grab the thing, set it down, and then walk away. And our friend will be by, like, looking at me and you, like, are you going to do more than that?
Like, is she okay? Like, yeah, you know I'm okay. You would know if this was abnormal, but this happens multiple times a day. That's very true. But, yeah, just very quick to get the thing, set it down, do what you need to do, give me the second I need. It's all that dodgeball training, really. Why you move so deftly to my aid. It is very funny, too, because, like, any of our friends who do spend enough time with us, who see those enough times, also start to learn, like, when something is or is not a problem. But I feel like seeing both of us in the same place, you give people an added level of confidence. Because if someone's only around me and I tell them repeatedly, like, don't worry, I'm fine, this isn't a problem, etc., etc., there's always going to be a little bit of like, are you fine? Are you? Because I mean, in all fairness, I don't even think that's in an infantilizing way. I think a lot of people just self-minimize their own needs. But when it's the two of us together and they see things like that, where I'm having a dizzy spell and maybe you grab the thing I'm holding and move it to safety, but then you aren't, like, doting over me because you don't need to be, I think that is really what helps new people click. Like, oh, okay, Royce is not panicking about this, therefore this is probably fine. Because I do see, like, the trajectory of new people and how quickly they do understand that. Because, like, now there's a friend of ours who we see together pretty regularly, but also is just alone with me a lot, and I did actually fully faint on him. That was the last time I lost consciousness, and that was last summer, maybe fall. So it's been a good run so far of not fully losing consciousness. So he did see that. He has seen some more aggressive spells, and for a while he seemed very concerned. But then when he started seeing your reactions or lack of reactions to things, now it gets to a point where if we are in a group setting with other people and I'm having a spell, now he is the one who's telling other people, like, yeah, she's fine. And it's like, that's great. I love that growth and how quickly people, learn to identify these things. Because I remember, like, not too long ago, you were, like, getting a little nervous when things like this were happening. It's a learning curve. Is there a weirdest thing? Can you think of the weirdest thing about being married to someone with EDS?
That we haven't already covered?
Well, even of the ones we did, like, is there one that you think is the weirdest?
I don't know. I think weird is mostly a matter of perspective. Like, how far is this off from the norm that you currently know?
Yeah, and arguably my genetic disorder isn't even the weirdest part of me. So yeah, I think that's probably going to do it for today. We will leave you off, as always, with our featured marketplace vendor, Vidramon, queer aspec teacher specializing in cute and happy fan art and stickers. And these stickers are very, very cute. I like them so much. There are Pride ones that are like ace and arrow colors. There are more general Pride colors as well. But I'm personally obsessed with these adorable little slime creatures. Just a little dollop of ooze. They look so cute and happy. You can get them in Pride colors. So I had to get some ace ones myself. And as far as fan art goes, there are several different options. There's Dragon Quest, there's Digimon. You can even get zines and art books. But seriously, if you ask me, you definitely need to look at these Pride slimes. I think they are absolutely adorable, and I love mine. So as always, we are going to put the link to our featured marketplace vendor in the show notes on our website, as well as the description box on YouTube. And as always, thank you all so much for being here, and we will talk to you all next time.